to have a special guest with us the next few weeks, and I just wanted to share a little bit of where this comes from. So back in January, it was just sitting with where we're going this year, and I try to reflect with others on what's happening and what's God doing in and through us, and how does that uniquely connect to Sundays and what we talk about and where we're at in the scriptures. And this idea of the spiritual practice of discernment kept coming up, and I'll explain a little bit about that because it's a very church word. And it's for any of us, whether we feel like we are religious or not, whether we feel like we have a relationship with Jesus or not, whether we feel like we actually have no idea what we're doing with prayer and God and all the things, or we feel pretty astute in it. Any of those things, a big part of what we're trying to do is discern where God is at in our life. What is God doing in our life? How is he communicating to us? What is he calling us towards? What is he asking us to put down and move towards? In so many ways, the simplicity is that we believe in the Christian tradition is that there's a God who is wanting to work in our life. And discernment is that spiritual practice that says, I want to intentionally create space to discern where God is at. And now the good news of this is that oftentimes, whether we feel like we're in a high point of our life or a low point of our life, is discernment still matters. Sometimes even more when we're actually in a low point, because what tends to happen is when we're in any form of pain or suffering or loss, we tend to push or pull away naturally for, I think, so many good reasons. And we might distance ourselves from God in a way rather than looking for God in the midst of our suffering, which is very hard to do, especially when we're in the midst of it. But there are ways, as we look at the scriptures, as we look at the writings of Paul, as we look at the early church practices, to continue to do the work. This is the other hard part of it, is discernment actually is proactive. We don't just sit back and God just clearly lines our life up, but we create spaces where we're noticing the movements of the Spirit, we're noticing the movements of God in our life, so that we can actually align most of our desires with God's desires. And that we can more so actually live into the things that God might be uniquely calling us to. And so back in January, I was working through that, invited Lila and Brian in who help discern teaching and things like that we're doing. And I reached out to a few people who are much more spiritual than I, thinking okay, if this is what we want to do, I need to go get some answers from others who have gone before me. So I sent some emails and connected with a couple spiritual directors. And one of them introduced me to Kate Houk, who's going to come up here in a second. She is from Visalia. She is a spiritual director and also going through the MFT program at FPU. And I want to highlight something real quick. If you've never heard of a spiritual director, we have these cards on the back table every Sunday. A spiritual director has probably been one of the most significant people in my life. And from small decisions I'm trying to make and big things and the things I don't even know, I meet with someone monthly who helps me do this practice of discernment. Where is God at in my life? What is God doing? What's he calling me to? Where am I getting in the way of myself? Where am I getting in the way of others? And these are spiritual directors. So a Christian spiritual director is a trained listener who will accompany you as you share about your spiritual journey, helping you to notice God's presence and activity along the way, as well as your personal reactions and responses. Hospitable, confidential, and grounded in biblical truth. Spiritual direction is a ministry that helps you grow in prayer and live into your calling as a follower of Christ. And so if you don't have a spiritual director, I would encourage you to check out this card. And then afterwards, if you actually want to talk to Kate, as she's just here in Visalia, I would encourage you to do so. So what we're going to do over the next few Sundays, she's going to start today, is each Sunday is going to be different, a different way of actually practicing discernment. So she's going to teach a little bit, and then she's actually going to walk us through a practice. And so we're going to participate together. I'm going to ask you to do the heavy lifting in this as she kind of tees some stuff up, but really excited. So Kate, why don't you come up? I have a music stand for you, and can we welcome her?
Is this the one that I can lift?
Okay.
I don't want it to jump out.
We'll find out.
It's going to be exciting. Thank you. All right. Well, just like Ryan said, discernment is really important because you make decisions every day, right? Even not just moments of big times of choice, but you're making decisions all day long to move toward the person God's inviting you to become. And the thing about discernment, the place we really begin is in desire. What do you want? What do you long for? And I admit that desire has a bad reputation. in religion, particularly in religious circles, right? It's got a PR problem. And it is that we often think of two things when we think of desire. Either we think of sexual desire, which is important. All of us are here because of it. Right? Facts. And also we think of material desire, which is also really, really good because we need food, we need shelter, we need clothing. And so both of these things are actually really, really good things. They're both from God, but they can easily get warped. And desire happens to be a key way that God speaks to us, that God invites us to come forward and to be known and to be seen. And today we're going to sit in a passage in which Jesus invites someone to name what they want. And we ask why. Okay, why does Jesus do this? It's because it's through desire we come to know ourselves, we come to know our own longings, and we come to know God's longing to be with us in our desires. So I want to acknowledge that some of us may have some resistance. Some of us may have some hurdles to get through within ourselves as we explore what we really, really want. And some of us have come from families or systems that have said that we're selfish if we want something, if we say what we want, that we're not being generous with God or with other people if we say, I want this. Also, some of us have learned to protect ourselves from disappointment. We turn off our ability to long for things because we don't want to sit in the pain of being disappointed in our desires. Or maybe you grew up in an environment in which naming what you want left you vulnerable to being controlled or manipulated by someone who is in power over you. And so you learn to hide what you want or even what you need to protect yourself. And yet others of us think that we're not deserving. We don't deserve to get what we want. And so we don't desire. We turn it off because we think, oh, if I desire something, then I have to face the fact that I'm not worthy of receiving that. And the thing is I want to honor that some of us have some real work to do internally around longing and around desire. But particularly in decision making, particularly in times of choice, avoiding our desires is highly problematic. It leads to resenting the choices we make or not being able to sustain or live with what we choose. Desire is a primary way that God leads people to discover who they are and what they're meant to do. It's in knowing and naming our desires we're able to discern what is in line with our deepest longings, and we're able to choose things that move us toward the person God is inviting us to become, the person God is loving us into becoming, and into deeper connection with other people. And it actually helps us live out the kingdom now. But I do want to say that all desires are not created equal. We have surface wants. Then this is like, I want a new iPhone. I want Air Jordans. I don't know if anybody wants Air Jordans in here, but that's what I thought of. I don't necessarily want Air Jordans. And then there are these deeper sacred desires. These are longings. These are for acceptance, for belonging, to be seen, to be known, for dignity, for security. So these are these deeper places within us. And it's not through our surface desires, but it's actually through these deeper longings that we're invited to meet God, to be with God in them. And so our deeper desires guide us to change. They move us to growth, and they connect us with God and with other people. Desire is important because ultimately our deepest desire is for God. Your deepest longing is for God. All roads lead back to God. All of these top wants lead to our deep desires, and our deep desires are met in God. And the picture that comes to mind when I think about this is of a anchor, of a buoy and an anchor, right? So you have these top desires, they're up here, and they kind of move around. But if you follow it down, there is an anchor of deep desire within you. And I want to, this feels like a safe place. I want to talk about a time where I saw the buoy and I did not see the anchor. It took some work. And a couple years ago, I decided to go back to school. And Instagram had sold me on this idea that in order to succeed in grad school, I needed a pair of small hoop earrings. And I was like, no, I need these. And school was about to start, and the Etsy seller had not gotten the notice of just how meaning-laden these earrings were for me. This was the linchpin of success. And they didn't arrive. And I remember talking to God and being like, God, I needed these earrings. I mean, they're working, right? They work today. I needed them in order to feel, and I realized as I was talking to God, I was like, oh, I actually need to feel secure. I need belonging. I need to be met in this moment. And I really thought the earrings were going to do it. But it really was, I needed to be with God in those places, that those places actually were an invitation into a conversation with God around what was going on in my heart. So I want to invite you into a posture of curiosity. When you encounter surface level wants, I want to invite you to get curious and ask yourself, how does this surface want actually follow me down? How does it take me down into these deep desires in my heart? And how is God longing to be with me in them? So wants lead to desires, and desires are grounded and met in God. So Ruth Haley Barton writes, your desire for more of God than you have right now, your longing for love, your need for deeper levels of spiritual transformation than you have experienced so far is the truest thing about you. You might think that your woundedness or your sinfulness is the truest thing about you, or that your giftedness or personality type, your job title or your identity as a husband or wife, mother or father, somehow defines you. But in reality, it is your desire for God and your capacity to reach for more of God than you have right now. That is the deepest essence of who you are. Your desires are central to your sense of who you are. They motivate you. In becoming aware of these deep needs and longings, you are able to move toward what will truly satisfy. And so we're going to look at a passage where Jesus asks Bartimaeus what he wants. And what he needs is plainly clear. It's very clear what he needs. And Jesus invites him to name that, to own that. And if there's anything that you walk away with today, I hope it is a deepened awareness and clarity around your deep desires and of how Jesus is drawing those places forward, welcoming them to be held, to be known, to be embraced. And so as we move into a time of practice, I want to give you a sense of where we're going, a roadmap, essentially. And this will help orient you within what we're going to do. So first, I'm going to invite you into a slowdown. And this slowdown just helps bring your awareness and your body into the space. And then I'm going to read a passage, and this helps ground you in Scripture. This helps you know so that later, if you want to have more of a conversation with Jesus around what you experienced, you'll be able to find it. Then I'm going to read a narrative that helps you really place yourself in the passage. And then finally, I have some reflection questions, and I'll take you through those. Use what's helpful and set free anything that isn't helpful. Really just hold on to what continues the conversation between you and God. And then finally, I'm going to pray. And when I say amen, that is your cue that we're going to bring our awareness back to the room. Okay? So if you have a cell phone, go ahead and turn it off. There's going to be some quiet music playing just to help create comfort and a distraction-free environment. So I want you to get into a comfortable position. If you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes. And begin by taking slow, deep breaths. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Inhale enough air so that your chest fully expands. As you continue taking slow, deep breaths, allow your mind to slow down. Let go of any thoughts or worries. Become aware of your body. Notice any tension. And with each exhale, slowly release any stress from your muscles. Relax your shoulders, your neck, your jaw, your forehead. Bring those places into a deeper state of release. Continue taking slow, deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. As you continue breathing slowly, imagine that God is breathing life, love, and peace into you with each breath that you take. As you breathe out, imagine any feelings that are weighing you down: stress, anxiety, fear, leaving you. Feel yourself sinking deeper and deeper into the presence of God. Offer a silent prayer to God, asking God to guide and direct you through this experience. Mark 10:46 through 52. As he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." And they called to the blind man. And Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." And they called to the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up, he is calling you." And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus, and Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" And the blind man said, "Rabbi, let me recover my sight." And Jesus said to him, "Go your way, your faith has made you well." And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him on the way. Prayerfully imagine that you are a blind beggar sitting by the side of the road. Can you see it? You sit there alone, quietly holding out a cup that asks for money, that asks for help. Sitting in the same spot every day, you survive heat, rain, and dust. But even worse than enduring these weather conditions, sometimes you feel invisible. People constantly walk by your spot, but they seem not to notice you in the midst of the rags that you wear. From time to time, you hear and feel the weighted clink of a coin in your cup. Once in a great while, someone may offer a kind word or a touch, but this is very rare. More often than not, you are mistreated, teased, or abused. Sometimes the money you have collected is stolen or scattered on the street, forcing you to scramble on your hands and knees to find what you so desperately need. You have an old threadbare blanket to wrap in. It's full of holes, so the cold air easily reaches your bare skin. It keeps your muscles clenched and tight. Today the air is quite cold and there's a strong breeze. But the sun is also shining. And it's really quite beautiful out. However, you can't see the beauty. And the sun isn't offering much warmth. It's been very slow and quiet. Not much foot traffic at all has passed you by today. And when people do walk by, they do so quickly because of the cold. There are no coins in your cup. Off in the distance, you begin to hear voices. It sounds as though a lot of people are coming your way. Please let there be help for me in this crowd. May someone give me what I need today, you pray. You hear the name Jesus, and your heart starts to thump wildly. Jesus' name is well known, even to people who have to sit on the side of the road all day. He is the healer. From somewhere deep inside of your desperate soul, a cry goes up. Jesus, help me. Please, Jesus, help me. You yell and seem unable to stop. A coin is dropped in your cup as someone hisses at you to be quiet and to stop yelling at Jesus. No, not money, Jesus. I need Jesus. Again, people tell you to be quiet. Don't bother the teacher. Stop being a nuisance. Sit quietly, beg silently, but you will not be silenced. Suddenly, someone grabs you by the arm and says, cheer up. He's calling you. You jump up and excitedly throw your blanket on the ground and half run, half walk into the middle of the crowd. People make a path for you and guide you along. The same people who were just shushing you now guide you to Jesus. Jesus reaches out and grabs your worn, weathered hands. You notice their soft warmth. He gently holds them and asks with great compassion in his voice, "What do you want me to do for you?" The crowd becomes quiet as you consider your answer. What do you want from Jesus? Look inside yourself. What do you want? What do you need? Take your time before answering Jesus. When you feel ready to answer the question, I want you to notice Jesus, his touch, his voice, his presence with you. How does Jesus respond to your request? Consider with God, what were some of your feelings during this exercise? Did anything surprise you? Was it easy or was it difficult to find your answer for Jesus? How did Jesus respond to you? What did you notice in Jesus' response to you? If you're in a decision-making process, how does this deep longing you named with Jesus show up in your decision-making process? How might naming your deep longings bring clarity to the decision at hand? What is in the way is the way. Consider the crowd in the scene. What are those things that you feel are keeping you from Jesus, preventing you from being with him? How might those very roadblocks be the invitations that are ushering you to him? God, you've led us here, and you have met us in this place. All of our truest longings lead to you. Would we enter our lives with a deeper understanding of ourselves and of how to live out what you are inviting us into? Would we be loved into the image of your Son and be active participants in the coming of your kingdom? Amen. When you feel ready, take a deep breath. Bring your presence back to the space. I hope today that you walk away with a clearer picture of how you deeply long to be with Jesus and how Jesus desires to meet those deep longings inside of you. I'm really looking forward to being with you next week. We're going to talk more about discernment and understanding what's going on inside of ourselves as we're in a decision-making process. So, thank you for today. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kate. I think a couple things before we move forward. You might be here this morning, and maybe you went through that, and maybe you experienced nothing. I just want to name that to say that that's okay, and that's like you're not like you didn't do it wrong, or you're broken or something. If you're like, wow, that seemed really meaningful, and maybe it was meaningful for other people, but I don't know what just happened. And I just want to say that's okay. And this, I think, goes for everyone in the room. One thing that I've noticed, and I know a number of you have also, is that we can be very addicted to busyness and noise. And so when we kind of come out of a very busy, noise-filled week, month, morning, and then we try to enter into this space of like silence and reflection and solitude, we're still wired for that busyness that we've been in. And so just to name, if that was hard for you to enter in, what I would encourage you to do is do this more. So actually have more regular rhythms in your life where you're pausing and you're pulling away and you're shutting your phone off and you're hiding in your closet, whatever it takes for you to get some form of just silence and stillness, just to be present to God. I would encourage you, if that was hard to do, I think that's a sign to say, I need to pull away a little bit more if I want to try on this practice of discernment. Then I'll share something and invite us into communion. Henry Nouwen, a spiritual writer and author, and I think lived an extraordinary life in so many ways, and is in touch with brokenness and pain beyond ways that I feel like I am. And one thing he talks about is discernment can be done, or at least is done in two ways. There's individual practices of solitude and silence where you're on your own, and you're reflecting and you're open and you're listening for God's voice. And there's also discernment within community. And I think what we're trying to do in this is to hold a little bit of that tension, that we're not just trying to give you a resource to do on your own, but we're also saying that together we want to be people that are actually practicing discernment. And what that means is to be in relationship with other people. And when we're going through decisions and choices, who are we inviting into that process? Who are we asking to also be listening and praying on my behalf? And so as we're doing this, it's not just an individual thing to you in your seat as you did that reflection now you have to walk away with, but I think there's also things that will happen collectively, and then there's things that you're supposed to take into community with others. And it's what a beautiful practice for us to take on that we probably don't have really many other places in our life. So, Kate, thank you. That was powerful. And then also how in that last thought, that aspect of community, what it looks like to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and to step outside of our own experiences and the ways that we see life and the way that we experience life. And what does it look like to even try to experience Jesus from someone else's perspective? Someone that we feel like we can relate to or that we can't relate to. And how that actually broadens what it looks like to discern where God is at, because he's bigger than just me. He's bigger than just the way I see things. He's bigger than the ways that I just experience life. So what a beautiful practice in so many ways. Why don't we stand together?